It's May 27th, 2021. The Pittsburgh Pirates are hosting the Chicago Cubs in a meaningless game. These squads are shadows of their former selves. Scrapping down at the bottom of the division, neither team will come close to sniffing the playoffs this year. But contained within this sunny Thursday afternoon is a gaffe so inconceivably stupid that it will be played on ESPN highlight reels for the rest of time. As a result of 24 seconds of pure pandemonium, all of baseball will band together to strangle a career in its crib, its comedy, and its tragedy. Let's dive into it. In the top of the third inning, the Cubs are leading 1-0 with 2 outs and a runner on second. Into the batter's box steps the hero of the hour, Javy Báez. Now, to understand this play, you must understand Javy. Javy's road to the majors has not been a smooth one. His father passed away when he was 10, and soon after his family moved from Puerto Rico to Florida to try to find spina bifida treatment for his sister, Noelle. During that time, Javy didn't know English, so he had to learn the language through trial and error. But he knew that his life's ambition was to play baseball and to provide care for his sister Noelle, and it was her dream to watch her brother Javy play in the majors. The inseparable siblings pushed each other to accomplish more than anyone thought possible, and it paid off. And when he was drafted, the 18-year-old Javy told Noelle, "You'll never have to worry again." He bought his family a new place to live and provided customizations necessary to support a life for his wheelchair-bound sister. Javy rose to the minor leagues and floated on the fine line between a struggling starter for the Chicago Cubs and being the most dominant player for the AAA Iowa Cubs. After a few bad games in the majors, he got bumped back down to the minors. Soon after the demotion, he got a call back from home. Noelle was sick in the hospital and had taken a turn for the worse. He told his mother, "If she goes away, I don't want to play baseball. I don't want to do anything." He got on the first flight home, but by the time he arrived, it was too late. Noelle was gone. To make matters worse, immediately after his bereavement leave, Javy broke his ring finger while sliding into second base. The strikeout-prone, ball-chasing Javy sat in rehab with his soul broken. He was dangling perilously on the edge of being just another kid who was good enough to make it to the show's doorstep, but not good enough to actually get inside. But deep within that pit of despair, something must have changed within Javy, because he returned to the game with a vengeance. He had fixed his swing and made such a splash in the minors that he got the nod in September to help Chicago make a run at the playoffs. The next year, he would be the cornerstone piece in helping the Chicago Cubs break the 108-year championship drought. For a man who had suffered so much, he played baseball like a 6-year-old kid that was just happy to be there. His style of swinging out of his shoes, acrobatic defensive plays, and aggressive base running earned him the nickname El Mago, the Magician. Javy Báez is not a baseball player. He's an agent of chaos, unleashed upon the sport with an attitude to match. He's a renegade who pushes the rules of the game to its very limits and makes you ask the question, is that legal? And, on this 0-2 count in 2001, we will once again be forced to ask that question. The pitch is high, and Javy hacks at it like the madman that he is. He chops the ball down the left field line directly into the waiting glove of Eric Gonzalez, who makes the long throw over to first. But it's offline, pulling Will Craig off the bag down the first base line to intercept the ball. First baseman Will Craig is essentially a rookie. He's a kid from Tennessee who climbed through the minors and showed some serious potential. In 2019, he was invited to play in the All-Star Futures game and was signed by the Pirates at the end of the season. After a dozen or so professional starts, Will is dangling perilously on that same edge between being too good for AAA and not being good enough to start in the show. He's hitting .200 with a home run and 3 RBIs. It's a slow start, but not an abysmal one. The kid's a decent slugger, and he has considerable potential as a player. In fact, he's talented enough to peel off the bag and snag the errant throw from third to prevent it from sailing into the stands. He now stands between Javy and first with the ball in his glove. All Will has to do is turn around and step on the bag and the inning will be over, or just stand there and wait for Javy to waltz into his glove. Javy is now trapped. A brick wall stands between the safety of first base and himself. This is a routine play, an out so simple that it barely merits mentioning. Any other player on any other field at any other time calmly accepts their fate and closes out the inning. To a normal player, this is as academic as 2 + 2 = 4. But Javy Báez is not a normal player. He is not bound by the laws of reason. Javy turns around and starts running back towards home plate. Remember, there's nothing waiting for him there. There's nowhere he can go. He can't run to home and claim to be safe. He's sprinting into a void of nothingness. There's no such thing as a run down between first and home. This does not happen in normal baseball. It defies all logic. And, in the chaos of the moment, Will makes a questionable decision. Instead of turning around and stepping on first to secure the out, he follows Javy down the base path towards home. A game of chase has been initiated, and the invitation to have a little fun at the ballpark has been accepted. Something in his gut told him to participate. The very same instincts that have been keeping us alive for thousands of years kicked in, and he initiated the game of chase. There's nothing wrong with a little harmless fun, right? The worst possible outcome is that Javy reaches home, there's nowhere else to go, and he tags Javy out. All he has to do is hold on to the ball. But as the announcers laugh at the child's play on the diamond, Willson Contreras is rounding third and heading to home. Both Will and Pirates catcher Michael Perez notice the incoming Cub and have a split-second decision to make. Now, if they had an infinite amount of time to make this decision, Will and Michael could have probably talked it out with their immense baseball knowledge and realized that if Javy is tagged out, it doesn't matter if Wilson crosses the plate or not. So long as they get Javy out, the inning will be over. All Will has to do is hold on to the ball and run Javy down, and it'll be all for naught. However, they don't have an infinite amount of time. They have about half a second. In the confusion and the panic, the catcher calls for the ball, and Will tosses it to him, but it's too late. Wilson slides into home, and both the umpire and Javy jubilantly call him safe. But now Javy has to play the game again. He needs to reach first, a fact that Pirates pitcher Tyler Anderson politely tries to remind everyone by pointing down the right field line. But as Javy sprints towards safety, the Pirates realize they have another massive problem on their hands. Second baseman Adam Frazier, seemingly dazed and confused by the entire ordeal, forgets to cover first base. The catcher's throw towards a running Adam is off target, and the ball goes sailing into right field. So Javy the opportunist, trots his way to second base. The right fielder tries to throw him out at second, but even that routine ball goes awry and goes skittering down towards third base. In the space of 24 seconds, the Pittsburgh Pirates, a professional baseball team, have missed the throw to first, forgotten to step on the first base bag, thrown the ball to home when they really shouldn't have, forgotten to cover first base, missed the throw to first base, missed the throw to second base. It is a comedy of errors that really belongs in Little League. To add insult to injury, Javy would score on the next at-bat after Happ singles to center. The Cubs would go on to win the game by 2 runs. This is stupid. It is dumb. It is a play so bizarre, so wild, and so unlikely that it probably takes cosmic intervention to produce such a preposterous situation. Nobody in their right mind could ever produce such a scenario. Except, this play was predicted. Some may even say it was prophesized by a little thread on the baseball forum Baseball Fever. 5 years earlier, in 2016, user Steve J. Rogers asked if it was possible to have a run down between first and home. He asked if there was ever a way that the first baseman would be caught off guard and throw the ball away instead of either stepping on the bag or tagging the runner out. He theorized that this could buy more time for other base runners to advance while the fielders were distracted. After getting around the idea of why anyone would ever do something so stupid, the befuddled members of the community broke down the rules of the game and determined that it was theoretically possible. To close out the thread, user Westside Grounds summarized with a hypothetical in which a Cubs player hits an easy grounder to the infield, but the first baseman doesn't step on the bag. The runners advance and score, while the batter prances around between first and home. The fielders, confused and disoriented, fail to tag and put the runners out, and the Cubs win the game. At the end of the story, he noted, quote, "Might as well have it be the Cubs, as that's as realistic as the rest of the story," end quote. Even contained within the realm of fantasy, the situation is so cursed and improbable that it could only happen to the Chicago Cubs. For the Pirates, this nightmare became a reality. They needed someone to blame. But who do you blame for something like this? Do you blame the third baseman, who missed a routine throw to first and pulled Will off the bag? Do you blame Will for falling for the game of chase and following Javy back down the line? Do you blame the catcher for calling for the ball or missing the throw to first? Do you blame the second baseman for not covering the bag during a rundown? Or you could say that it was the entire team's fault. This is a Thursday afternoon game between 2 terrible teams. There's nearly as many people working the game as there are attending it. Why wasn't the entire dugout screaming to make the play at first base? It's not like we couldn't hear them. Perhaps, most realistically, you can blame the baseball gods for inflicting such a curse upon the Pirates that day. Baseball looked at the play and pinned the blame squarely on the shoulders of rookie Will Craig. He was the one running down the baseline after all, and in an instant, he became the fall guy. In a matter of seconds, the sport he had gave his life to turned his back on him, and he was cast off as a leper. Because of the absurdity of the play, made only possible by the insanity of Javy Báez, his world was destroyed. Will's hopes of a career was dashed against the rocks, and he was forced to flee to the other side of the world because of 3 seconds of folly. Talking later to the press, Will said, "I feel like that play kind of defined me. I didn't want that to be the case." He played 2 more series against the Rockies and the Royals and then was demoted down to the minors at the end of the month. He could never shake the label of being that guy who ran towards home, so he had to move towards Korea to play ball again. But did Will really deserve the blame? After all, he wasn't the one who missed the throw to first, nor did he call for the ball at home, nor did he forget to cover first. He was a small part of a larger gaffe, but the only one who really got any of the blame. Onlookers paid no attention to the multitude of physical or mental errors made by the Pirates. They all focused on the kid. Why? Well, let's take a look at the career stats of the 4 major players involved in the gaffe. Gonzalez, a third baseman who threw the errant ball in the first place. Will, the first baseman who followed Javy back to home. Michael, the catcher, who called for the ball and airmailed it to first. And Adam Frazier, the second baseman who failed to cover first. The first thing we notice across their careers is that the other 3 players have a significant advantage in experience. Michael and Eric have been at bat hundreds of times. Adam has been up thousands. Meanwhile, Will has only ever been up to bat 64 times. He is a nobody getting his start in the big leagues. But he's made the most of it. If you look at their home runs versus their at-bats, he has the same amount of yard balls as Frazier does, and even more than what Gonzalez has. Perez stands out here as a supreme deep ball hitter, but remember, Perez has 10 times the batting experience that Will does in the majors, so it's not surprising that he's better at going deep. So what about career averages? Well, Eric and Adam stand out as perfectly average hitters sitting at about 250. Pretty respectable. Perez is way down in the dumps at .17, and Will falls between them at about 200. Now, 200 isn't great, but it's not terrible either, especially for only playing 20 games. Looking at his OBS and OPS, it's pretty much the same. He's competitive with the other players. Taking a look at their collective stats, you could come to the conclusion that these 4 players were pretty much the same, just with different levels of experience. Now, don't get me wrong, Will is not some diamond in the rough player with stats that will knock your socks off. But when stacked against his fellow gaffers, some of whom have 43 times the experience that Will has, he's a perfectly average player that just happened to be involved in a once-in-a-century goof made possible by one of the most outside-the-box players of all time. And his punishment is that all of his dreams of making it in the bigs were immediately crushed, and he had to move 6,800 miles away to try to escape the dark cloud of goofness that followed him around. So it's not that Will was significantly worse than the other players that causes him to get all the attention, but let's talk about the optics. Unfortunately for Will, the errors made by his teammates were instantaneous flashes of failure. A missed throw, a poor call, an empty base. Will's error was prolonged. It was comical to watch the first baseman chase Javy back towards home. On his own, it's not the optimal play, but eventually he'll get him out. But people will remember the image of Will chasing after Javy. It's branded into the minds of fans everywhere, and it won't go away for as long as we live. Everyone's seen a missed throw or an open base a time or two, but nobody has ever seen a first baseman running back towards home. It's a memorable failure. And when he reaches home, Will has a veteran player calling for the ball. Now, Will's only been playing in the big leagues for 20 days, and if you have the confidence after 1 month at your job to tell an experienced coworker that you're not going to do what he tells you to do, well, that rides the line between confident and cocky real quickly. Will did what we all do. When the experienced colleague tells us to do a task, we do it, especially when we're new at our jobs. Worse for Will, the other 3 members of the play have already crossed over the cliff between too good for the minors and not good enough for the majors. Even if these players were painfully average or even below average, they had already survived the perilous rookie season, teetering back and forth off the cliff of AAA baseball. A comedy of errors like this couldn't drag them down. They were safe. But for a rookie like Will, all it takes is a single moment of absurdity to send someone's life careening down into oblivion. This is not fair. This is not justice. This is a cruel, calculated torture designed to inflict the most suffering imaginable on a young player. We can all look at this play and point and laugh at Will as he throws away his dream, but that analysis completely disregards Javy's ingenuity. This play has happened thousands of times before, with players just giving up and embracing defeat. No one has ever thought to run backwards. No one has ever been crazy enough to try. It probably wouldn't work, but if apathy means death, why not aim for a slim chance of success? Maybe something crazy will happen. It just might work out, and you may wander into a rare moment of brilliance. I think the most important lesson here is to not confuse moments of brilliance with moments of stupidity. A lot of us do this to ourselves or to each other. We walk into a trap and then blame ourselves for falling in, rather than praising the genius of the person who lured us into it. When family or friends fall for a scheme, we ask, how could they be so stupid? Instead of recognizing the evil brilliance of the ploy and the weakness that it so cunningly exploited. Because Will's not stupid. He's a good ball player. He's rose through the ranks to be better than 99.9% of everyone else in the world at the game of baseball. He's a rookie with potential. And when he is pulled off the baseline, Javy Báez exploits his natural instinct to chase him. He sees Javy with his human eyes, running away from him, his objective, and that primal hunter instinct takes over. Follow Javy back down the baseline. And so, he listens to his instincts and follows him. And then he reaches home plate, and his experienced colleague yells at him, "Throw me the ball." And if Will had an extra 5 seconds to process the information, to see that if he just tags Javy out, the play is over, he would probably make that decision. He's a smart guy. But he has about half a second to make a decision, and so he listens to his veteran colleague and throws him the ball. Will is not stupid. Will is the victim of his own human nature. Hunt down the objective. Listen to your superiors. Those are things that we all do every single day, except Will got to be featured on ESPN over and over and over again, from then until now, and probably until the end of time. He found himself in circumstances so absurd that even the prophets declared that it could only happen in the Chicago Cubs. He's pulled off the base. He sees his target. He listens to his veteran colleagues. And I'm not saying that he's guilt-free. He's not. He should have turned around and stepped on first base or held on to the ball. However, assuming the entire play is his gaffe and placing the entire blame at his feet completely ignores the absurdity of the moment and the genius of Javy Báez. And I think we could all learn a lesson from that. Because when you hear stories of grandparents getting a call at 2 o'clock in the morning from someone claiming to be their grandchildren stuck somewhere on the other side of the country, and they fork over a whole bunch of money over the phone, the first natural instinct is to say, how could they be so stupid? But that reaction completely ignores the reality that your grandparents at 2 o'clock in the morning probably don't have all their cognitive functions. They're acting on their based instincts, and their instinct is to protect their family. The traps we fall into are cunningly designed to exploit our human weaknesses. And perhaps we should all stand to have a little bit more appreciation for those setting the traps, and a little bit more grace for the victims. Because I don't think that Will deserves to have to move to Korea to continue his baseball dream over something as simple as falling for the Javy Báez trap.